Family and friends have always been important to me. As a child, I lived with my mom and dad, and I was very close to my dad's side of the family. It was very loving and unified and fun. I was pretty happy. But I already was starting to feel the effects of my cancer. We just didn't know what it was really. One day I was okay, and then the next day I started feeling bad, you know. Once we moved to New York for my treatment, I no longer had that big family bond anymore. What I was feeling back then in New York was just sadness. Never really peace. My baptism day was very exciting. The spiritual family I inherited was very vast. The day I met Marissa was at a convention. She's a really great friend, a spiritual friend. When she takes me to my hospital appointments, we would eat out. When they told me about my cancer being gone, I was really happy. I was ecstatic. I was like, finally, I'm gonna get to do normal things that a kid my age should be able to do. I don't need to be afraid or anxious anymore. Unfortunately, I did relapse again. And basically right now, my present condition is there's nothing really more to do. They're just waiting to let nature take its course, basically. And that's it. In harmony with Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26, I had to let myself process the news and let myself be sad, angry. Let yourself feel those feelings. Do not try to repress them, but you can control your thoughts and your actions.
We've been watching parts of a video segment shown to Jehovah's Witnesses on the Saturday morning of their 2022 Pursue Peace convention. The theme of this section of the convention is how our brothers are enjoying peace despite opposition, illness, economic problems, natural disasters. The segment is hosted by governing body helper William Malenfant, and it comes in the form of 5 testimonials. And what they've done is they're showing these testimonials kind of mixed up. So you hear part of one story, and then you hear part of another, and then you hear part of another, and then you hear from the first person again, and the cycle continues. So it's been a little bit confusing for me, or it was confusing when I was doing my prep. And what I decided to do to make things easier was to just focus on the individuals when it comes to this rebuttal and the sushis. So that's why you're seeing, you know, the breaks in the segment, and you're seeing us skip from one part of the story to another. It's because I'm having to stitch together little bits of the story that are interspersed throughout a much longer video. And one of the 5 stories I decided wasn't even worth talking about. It was some guy who lost his job and ended up doing a menial job, and that's apparently relevant. But there are 4 stories that are worth talking about, and hopefully you can see why this is one of them. So we have been hearing from Antoinette, who is a beautiful young girl. I'm guessing, I don't know the age, I'm guessing she's going to be 12 or 13, I don't know. But what a brave young woman who is faced with death, it seems. So her condition is terminal. She had cancer, the cancer went into remission, then there was a relapse, and she's now been told that it's just a matter of letting nature take its course. In other words, this girl is dying. Jehovah's Witnesses have form for this sort of propaganda. I've actually done a sushi on this already, sushi 289, and it's from the April 2022 JW Broadcasting episode. Thumbnail here if Tibor is gracious. And in this sushi, I talk about the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses use the deaths of children as emotional manipulation, as propaganda. Death happens at some point to everyone, including children, irrespective of what religion you're in. But the message Jehovah's Witnesses want you to take from this is that dying or being gravely ill is only manageable if you get the peace of being a Jehovah's Witness. And you'll notice that Antoinette describes her childhood and then getting this prognosis and having to move to New York so that she could receive treatment. And she talks about how there was never really peace. And then magically, once Antoinette gets baptized, commits the rest of her life to the organization, that's when suddenly everything improves. That's when suddenly she has peace. In other words, this is the only way that you're going to get through a situation like this. Terminal illness, staring death in the face. The only way you can deal with that, apparently, is to become a Jehovah's Witness. As I've said before, this organization is shameless when it comes to exploiting situations like this and leveraging them, leveraging people's pain and misery and impending death to pull on the heartstrings. And I'm just going to say this, some may disagree. For me, Antoinette, sweet, sweet girl, I can only imagine her being just the kindest, most beautiful person. So nothing I have to say in this video, Antoinette, if you end up watching, nothing I have to say in this video is against you personally, sweetheart. It just feels as though at least some things that she is saying are scripted. For example, she says,
in harmony with Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26, I had to let myself process the news and let myself be sad, angry.
Again, I don't know how old Antoinette is. Let's say, for argument's sake, she is 12 or 13 years old. No 12 or 13-year-old speaks like that. I'm sorry, you can disagree if you like, but at least in my humble opinion, you'll never find a 12 or 13-year-old speaking of their own initiative, in their own words, saying, in harmony with Ephesians 4, verse 26, I had to let myself process the news and let myself be sad and be angry. I'm willing to be contradicted. I'm not asserting this as fact. This is purely speculation on my part. But it feels very much as though the organization is adding insult to injury by not only exploiting this girl's terminal illness for emotional propaganda purposes, I strongly suspect they are also putting words in her mouth.
Pretty much my whole life, it has revolved around my illness, but I learned how to shift focus. I just don't focus on myself all the time. I focus on others, their trials that are different, but just as hard. You read the stories on jw.org in the newsroom. The Russian brothers and sisters, I pray for them constantly because they're going through a very tough time.
If you focus on yourself, your pain gets worse. When you focus on others and on their problems, your pain lessens, diminishes.
Hello.
Hello.
Antoinette, when I was told that we would talk with each other, this was something very special for me.
Same for me too. When the brothers told me as well that I was meeting you, I was really excited.
Thank you for your prayers in behalf of the brothers in Russia. They are precious. We can learn so much from you.
When I heard that you were praying for us and for the brothers and sisters in Russia, it really encouraged me and Felix. It's such an example for me personally. We mentioned it in our prayer yesterday. Felix was saying that you are a great example of how we need to genuinely care for our brothers and sisters.
We love you very much.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
It was nice meeting you.
Goodbye. And,
My cancer is uncurable, but I know the cure is in the new system, so that's the cure. I like to imagine when that time happens, what will I be doing? Obviously, I'm going to be jumping for joy because I'm going to be rid of my cancer. I'm going to enjoy food that we never really got to enjoy, and I'm going to have so many animals. I'm going to make a house. I'm going to learn how to make a house. Peace in this world is not the absence of illness, danger, persecution, or economic problems. Peace in this world is listening to Jehovah's guidance, praying to Jehovah constantly, meditating on Jehovah's word and his promises.
If you're anything like me, you are boiling with rage at this point. How dare they? How dare they take this young girl who is dying of cancer and use her as a puppet for their nonsense, for their grotesque theology about billions dying so that the planet can be terraformed and only Jehovah's Witnesses live on it? How dare they? This is how low this organization is prepared to go. They've done it time and time again, as I've already said. They did it with Laura. They did it with Felicity. Both young girls who died and would have died irrespective of what religion their parents were part of. But they took the memory of those girls and used it, exploited it for propaganda purposes. I am telling you, viewers, I am keeping track of this. Yeah? I'm remembering Felicity. I'm remembering Laura. And I will remember Antoinette. I don't know how much longer she has. For all we know, she's already died. I really, really hope, obviously, that she hasn't. I want her to have as much life as she can possibly have. I think her condition is utterly tragic. But what's also tragic is that she is being exploited and her illness is being exploited so clearly to peddle this nonsense about a paradise earth where everything's going to be magically fixed. My heart was breaking when she was talking about the paradise being the cure. I'm not even going to ask Tibor to show the clip again because I don't want to watch it again and I don't want to even think about it again. And I'm sure many of you will feel the same way. It's so disgusting. It's got to make my top 10 in terms of worst clips for 2022. It's difficult to imagine, to be honest, this being topped because it's so disgusting. And adding to what I was saying earlier about there being indications that not everything Antoinette was saying were strictly her words. I mean, I'm speculating for the example I gave earlier where she says, in harmony with Ephesians 4 verse 26. That just doesn't sound like the sort of thing someone her age would say. But almost certainly those concluding comments where she says, peace in this world is not the absence of illness, danger, persecution, or economic problems, blah, blah, blah. Almost certainly that is a script that she is being asked to narrate. Let's get a dying girl, a girl who's dying of cancer, let's get her to narrate this, because it will sound more persuasive coming from her because she's dying. If you're watching this governing body, or anyone on the teaching committee, or anyone remotely involved in the making of this disgusting propaganda, you should hang your heads in shame. And some of you may be confused about the video conferencing part, where Antoinette is speaking to a man named Felix and ends up also meeting Felix's wife. Felix, in case you haven't seen any of this in its raw, unedited form, Felix is a Jehovah's Witness who was arrested in Russia, and he also takes part in this convention piece. So he joins the video segment to speak about how our brothers are enjoying peace despite opposition. So he gets kind of wheeled in front of the camera as a shining example of overcoming opposition, and we're going to hear more about his story in the remainder of the rebuttal. But there's this crossover part where the makers of this, again, vile propaganda make the decision to kind of bring Antoinette and Felix together. And the message seems to be that what Felix has gone through or is going through, namely, I think it's 3+ years in prison, is at least equal in some way to Antoinette dying. That's the very strong message that comes across, at least to me. And I've edited the clips down, not just because they're sickening to watch, but also, quite frankly, for time. I'm aware that my audience might not like to watch this stuff for more than, say, 2 or 3 minutes. So I'm very conscious to only show you the parts that you really must see. But what happens is Antoinette and Felix come together in a video conference that has clearly been arranged by the producers. And Felix, at one point, is pretty much lecturing Antoinette about how bad things were for him. He talks about, if you ask how much worse can it get, you won't have to wait long to find out. Or in other words, when you think, how much worse can it get, for sure something worse is bound to happen. Again, I'm not going to show you the clip. Let's skip all that, but trust me, it's in there. He goes into this long explanation of how terrible things were for him. And don't get me wrong, things were pretty bad for him. But he's alive. And he gets to live out the rest of his life, provided nothing unforeseen and tragic happens. He gets to breathe air for the next few decades. Antoinette doesn't get that. Antoinette is dying. And quite honestly, the suggestion, which is very strong in the video, that Felix and Antoinette are on a level pegging in terms of what they're going through, and that Antoinette can learn from Felix, even though he says, oh, I can learn much from you. And the idea of Antoinette apparently being coaxed to weave in this persecution narrative into her own story, rather than just talking about herself, she's got to do this segue, apparently, where she says, of course, when you're in my situation, it helps if you think about other people. And then you switch to Felix quoting Acts 20, verse 35. There is more happiness in giving than in receiving. It's just a blatant hijacking, in my opinion, of the emotional weight of Antoinette's story, and using Antoinette and using her horrendous situation to piggyback on this persecution narrative that Jehovah's Witnesses or the Jehovah's Witness leadership are clearly obsessed with. I've called it many times persecution porn. They absolutely crave examples of Jehovah's Witnesses being persecuted so that they can make all Jehovah's Witnesses feel persecuted and make all Jehovah's Witnesses feel as though theirs must be God's one and only true religion, because which other group is being persecuted like we are? Only it turns out there are other groups that are being persecuted to a far more savage and brutal degree right now. Frankly, how dare they do this? How dare they take a young woman's suffering and imminent death and use that as an opportunity to talk about how persecuted and oppressed the organization is, and try to draw parallels between her dying soon and someone being unfairly imprisoned.